We're at House of Blues Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. One of the best studios on the planet. One of the best studios in the world. Before Burl made the Mothership, a couple years before, we actually shot out a bunch of different converters at a studio here in Nashville, and I picked my favorites. And then when the Mothership came out and I had heard the buzz about it, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to check this out for myself. So I brought it in my studio, and it was significantly better than what I was using. So I decided to switch immediately to Mothership for all my conversion. It's actually so good that I was called to do a record out of town. We went down to this studio in Texas called Sonic Ranch, and we did a week's worth of tracking, and I begged, borrowed, and stole enough Burl conversions so that I could have a full Mothership down there and we could record everything through it, because I didn't want to go that far and work with the great players and do this record and not have it go through Burl conversion, because the difference is that big to me. Like, I don't want to ever cut anything that's not running through Burl converters anymore.
Hi, I'm Justin Niebank. I'm a recording engineer, producer, musician from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm kind of a Burl freak. I own several of the mic pre's, which I use tons. A lot. I'm using, when I first got them, it was all about kind of rock stuff, electric guitars, drums. And then I've discovered that the harmonic stuff that they bring to acoustic instruments is fantastic. You don't have to drive it really hard, but it brings a certain harmonic richness that really sticks out in a mix if you know how to use filters around it really well. And I use those a ton. Obviously the Mothership is a big deal to me, and I mix a lot of records, if I don't go through a console, through the Vancouver to tape, if I can. The B32 is, first off, you just run stuff through it and it sounds better. It's that kind of deal. It's just, it's one of those boxes you put it on and you go, oh, that just feels better. You know, it's like when I was talking about great clocks, it has the same thing. I have found that with certain projects I like to drive it. I pretty much always have the transformers in now. It's kind of a standard thing for me. Every time I put it in, I always experiment, and nowadays I go through every song to see if I can drive it and it brings it. Some stuff it's not appropriate, but I love having the options. I just love having the thing where I can, you know, go for something that has I have an emotional reaction to, which just makes mixing more fun to me. Let me tell you what one of the things that's great about the Mothership, besides how I feel about it, and the fact that, you know, the greatest moment in any tracking session is when you're working on an arrangement and you're hashing it out and everyone comes in for the first playback, and that is the key to a great engineer to me, is when that first playback comes in, the musicians and the artist feel like the music is bigger than the sum of the parts. And every engineer should always aspire to that. When they walk in, they just can't believe that it's them on those tracks. And anything that I can have to gain advantage on that is the kind of tools that I like to work with. And the Burl has taken it to, I mean, I have to say, it's taken it to another level for me. That's the greatest thing ever, because I mean, as an engineer, I respect guys who like to twiddle and run things through all kinds of boxes, but I like to do as little as humanly possible because I like the music to have the straightest, coolest path to playback. And the Burl does that for me.
I always wonder about conversion and things like that, and what's going to make a difference. I mean, how much of a difference is it going to make to me when I go to mix, when I go to track? And what I heard here today, it makes a huge difference. The Burl guys have put together something that is so musical sounding. This device, comparatively speaking to the Avid HDIO that we were comparing to, had so much more depth and dimension, space, width, dynamic range, all of those things that you're trying to get in the mix. I mean, music is about emotion and trying to convey that, and this thing really, I mean, it puts things into a perspective and gives you a great starting point. Any engineer would love to have one of these in their studio or work on one wherever they are. I'm gonna have to come up with some money now. So I love these guys and I kind of hate them, you know? But I have to figure out how to get one of these into my studio.
We were sitting in the control room listening to some A/B between the Avid HDIO and the Burl Mothership, and it was honestly the first time that I have sat in a A/B thing for converters where I didn't have to strain to listen or confuse myself that I was hearing a difference. There's a immediate noticeable difference that I heard. One of the first things that I noticed right away was the clarity in the top end that immediately popped out. And then right after that, the depth of the low end, the floor just opened up and kick got punchier and everything's just more present and the clarity's there. And I'm still having trouble believing that there's not something else happening on the two bus there, but it's honestly an amazing difference. And now I got to figure out how I can put it in the budget to get one.
For me, I'm a drummer, and I really love the drum sound. I mean, the decay and the sustain and the cymbals to the power that it gave to the kick drum. And I know we're talking a lot about the phase in the low end of everything, and it really syncs up with the Mothership in a way that adds so much power and excitement and lifts up that low end. And I mean, it just really caters to each instrument, and the guitars really cut through and was separated from everything else in a way that, you know, is, again, something you might have to do in mixing with a lot of digital stuff. You don't need to, you know, brighten anything up. It was already bright, and to the ears, it was exciting to hear something new and different than what you're always hearing through maybe some of the Avid stuff or some of the industry standard stuff that's been going around.
When you're a drummer and you're tuning, that's what it's supposed to sound like, because he tunes it to what he thinks it should sound like. And the Burl nailed it, and some. It just surrounded it with love, as the owner said, and made it sound hefty and fat, but not overblown, and not like putting up an EQ on 100 hertz or something and just putting up the low end everywhere. I was totally stunned. We are selling our gear and grabbing Burl right now. Get you some.
I heard sounds that I was just kind of convinced that it was my old ears that I wasn't going to be able to hear anymore. I heard those tonight. I heard sizzle in the cymbals that I haven't heard in music for a long, long time. I heard really round mid-range and smooth high-end, strong but not bomby bass. I heard a clarity and an openness in the same tracks that I heard on the Avid that I had been pretty convinced that was not possible with digital music anymore. I think it was just an honest sound that you really felt like you were on the stage. I've done a lot of stage work over the years, and it just felt like I was hearing real instruments through real amplifiers on a stage.
There's wetness to the vocals, there's realness to the vocals, and the drums sound like drums. The instruments sound like instruments. There's just a depth that you don't get with the standard, whatever that is that comes with Pro Tools. I don't know anything about that stuff, but I know what I heard, and it's night and day. It's remarkable, it really is. It kind of makes me want to go in there and grab the drums again and record some more songs and do that. That'd be pretty all right. Yeah, incredible, night and day. It sounded like when you're sitting behind the kit and you're playing it and you're like, I wish this would come across in the recording. And a lot of times it just doesn't. It sounded real. It sounded like real instruments. It didn't sound like a bunch of digital games and hide and go seek, like covering up a terrible sound. It sounded like this is what the instrument sounded like, which is refreshing for a drummer instead of having a bunch of program like, oh, we'll just replace that. You didn't have to. It just sounded real. It was incredible.